I too would like to read a snippet of something one of our neighbors has recently written. Permission to read?
As long as it hasn't already been stated by another member, that would be fine, Representative Walsh.
It has not been. This is from Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy.
Okay.
Washington State is currently debating a tax that targets Alaska's fuel costs. Their view of Alaska as a colony is reflected on a tax on all of us, with nary a care to our lives and economy. If Alaska is to be punished as a business partner with Washington State, then we will respond accordingly. That was a quick snippet of a letter that Dunleavy wrote to his constituents in Alaska. Mr. Chair, this is an essential amendment to the underlying bill, and I ask for a yes vote on the amendment. These things that we're hearing about from Alaska, from Oregon, from Idaho, they aren't a trade war in the international sense, but they are the worst case scenario for interstate commerce in our country. And as many of you know, when this country was founded, at first, we didn't have the Constitution we have right now. We had a looser document, a more limited document that was called the Articles of Confederation that allowed states to act more independently, like sort of nation states. And one of the things that quickly emerged were these kinds of policies, exactly like this so-called fuel export tax. And among those new states, when the country was young, there were kind of intramural trade wars that started. One state would levy cotton, the other would levy paper. And they got into battles which restricted and limited business and the economies of the young country. So we, a few years later, we developed what we now know as our Constitution. And a critical part of that, although we don't talk about it much these days, a critical part of it was the idea that it really encouraged interstate commerce by restricting an individual state's ability to do things like what this fuel export tax tries to do. And the Commerce Clause of the Constitution that we have now really states that this sort of policy is not allowed, is forbidden. So I think that this underlying policy, the underlying bill, without Rep. Barkis's amendment, is going to be a lawyer's banquet. I mean, there'll be lawsuits right away challenging the constitutionality of this kind of interstate squabble, where one state, unfortunately our state, tries to implement this kind of punitive fiscal policies, punitive tax on other states. The Commerce Clause of the Constitution was written for this kind of thing. And I think there'll be lawsuits immediately, and I'm afraid that Washington will lose those lawsuits and will end up with another policy we've made here in Olympia that has to be unwound or restructured or delayed to fix later, again, a familiar situation to all of us. And I don't think we want to go that way, Mr. Chair. So if we adopt the amendment, we get rid of this constitutionally dubious tax, and we replace it with something that, while you may want to debate it, actually stands on very firm constitutional ground and is a sustainable, long-term solution to the financial needs that we know our transportation system has, and will avoid all that trouble. So let's not get into this situation that our Constitution was really critically designed to prevent. Let's adopt the amendment and avoid the trouble. Thank you. Good amendment, vote yes. It does make this regressive tax a little less regressive, and that's a good thing. But if you want to really do justice by a working family that is buying a used car, if you talk to them, I'm sure they'd tell you they'd rather have 50 cents less a gallon of gas than this small break. That savings would be much more important to that working family over the course of time than this one. But this is a break, and it's a well-targeted one. So we'll support it and try to find others like it. Thank you. I too am going to support the amendment and ask for a yes vote. But Mr. Chair, we have to get away from this process wherein we pass legislation that needs repair. We have got to stop doing this. We need to repair and perfect our public policy before we sign it into law. This is a testament to a bad way of doing public policy, Mr. Speaker. Now, to the gentlelady's credit, this amendment does make it a little less bad, and it does give us a window to repair it, and that's a good thing. But the overall practice of passing flawed legislation that we know is bad and needs fixes is not the right way to go about doing what we do. So can't really say no to this. We need to fix this element of the policy. So we'll vote yes, but please, to you, Mr. Chair, and all of my colleagues, we need to get out of the practice of signing flawed legislation into law.